Hello everybody, my name is Bobby Rollin. Today we're going to be talking about airspace. We're going to be giving you a brief introduction into our FAA airspace. Just give you an idea of the requirements, the different things you'll need to know for each type. Just a big picture overview of the different types of airspace that you'll encounter during your flying career. Our goal today is that you have a basic understanding. This lesson is obviously not a substitute for getting an actual lesson from your instructor, so please use this as a supplement, not as a substitute. But our goal today is that you have some basic facts and some skills that you can take to those lessons to make your flight training go through a lot quicker. So with that, let's jump into airspace. This is sort of a broad overview of airspace. I really like this picture. This is put up by the FAA. You can get little bookmarks of this airspace, but this sort of lays out basic overlook of what our airspace looks like. We have 6 different kinds of airspace. So we have Class A, Class Alpha airspace, Class B, Class Bravo airspace, Class Charlie, Class Delta, Class Echo, and Class G. I want you to, take a screenshot of this, look this up on your own time. I really love this picture for teaching. It's a good reference. We'll talk about this at the end of our lesson here too. First, let's talk about first one, Class Alpha airspace. Class Alpha airspace is IFR only airspace, meaning that you have to have an IFR rating and your plane has to be IFR rated. The dimensions of Class Alpha airspace are 18,000 feet to flight level 600. When you're doing your flight training, whether that's in an Archer or for me, I'm doing it at a Cessna 152, we're not getting up to 18,000 feet in a Cessna 152. And I don't think you are in any of our training aircraft. You won't encounter this during your flight training unless you do high altitude training. But it's super important to know where Class Alpha airspace is and that you're required to have IFR ratings for that. Next, let's talk about Class Bravo airspace. Class Bravo or Class B, I like to think of it as the busiest airspace. This is the airspace that surrounds our major international airports. Think JFK, LAX. Here we got a picture of Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. That is a Class Bravo airspace. How do we tell an airport is a Class Bravo airspace? It has these blue rings surrounding it. These blue rings denote, if you remember from that big overview, it denotes the area for our Class Bravo airspace. I want you to think of Class Bravo airspace as an upside down wedding cake. That's the best way to teach it. It has many layers to it, and it extends from the surface to 10,000 feet MSL. Class Bravo airspace is usually 30 nautical miles in radius. So it's a very big airspace. The weather requirements for Class Bravo airspace is you must have at least 3 statute miles of visibility to fly VFR and remain clear of clouds the whole time. So that means you can go right up to the clouds, but you can't touch it, you can't go within it. You just have to remain clear of the clouds. To enter Class Bravo airspace, you need explicit ATC clearance. So what does that sound like? So if you wanted to enter, let's say Minneapolis Airport, you would call it Minneapolis Approach, and you'd say Minneapolis Approach, Cessna 123, requesting landing full stop, Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. In order to enter that airspace, they would say something to you like, Cessna 123, Minneapolis Approach, cleared into Class Bravo, fly current heading. Something like that. But they would say explicitly, if you are VFR, not if you're IFR, but if you're VFR, cleared into Class Bravo. That's the key for getting into Class Bravo airspace. Otherwise, if you enter any of these upside down rings, you will be intruding upon that Class Bravo airspace and you could get in trouble for that. To enter, you need to have a 2-way radio and a transponder with altitude reporting capability. So make sure you have that before you enter into Class Bravo airspace. You have a speed limit within Class Bravo airspace. You have to, while you're within Class Bravo airspace, you have to stay below 250 knots. So think about that upside down wedding cake that we're talking about. If you're underneath one of the layers, you have to stay below 200 knots. If you're above 10,000 feet and you're inside Class Bravo airspace, you're allowed to go up to Mach 1. You might be thinking to yourself, when am I going to be above 10,000 feet MSL in Class Bravo airspace? Go take a look at the Denver International Airport sectional. You will get up to 10,000 feet MSL at that airport, so it's important to know the speed limit. But that's sort of the basics of Class Bravo. We'll talk about that more. Next, let's talk about Class C, Class Charlie airspace. Class Charlie is less busy than Class Bravo airspace, but it is still very busy airports. Think an airport like Midway Airport in Chicago, or Daytona Beach, or Madison, Wisconsin. That'll be your Class Charlie airports. Still very busy, but they're going to be smaller. The dimensions of Class Charlie airspace Instead of being an upside down wedding cake, it'll be an upside down wedding cake with only 2 layers. Again, that's usually 2 layers of an upside down wedding cake. So you have those 2 rings. It extends from the surface to 4,000 feet MSL, so not up to the 10,000 feet we were talking about for Bravo. The inner ring will have a radius of 5 nautical miles, and the outer ring will have a radius of 10 nautical miles. So that's a lot smaller than our 30 nautical mile radius in Class Bravo. The weather requirements to enter Class Charlie as VFR traffic is 3 miles of visibility and our 152 cloud clearance. What's the 152 cloud clearance, you ask? Great question. Those are the distances you have to remain from clouds. So it stands for 1,000 above, 500 below, and 2,000 feet horizontal. Those are the distances you have to stay away from the clouds in order to enter Class Charlie airspace. You have to be able to maintain that in order to enter. To enter Class Charlie airspace, you must establish two-way radio communication with ATC. Establish. That's different than getting clearance in the Class Bravo airspace. So Class Charlie airspace, you just have to make contact with them in order to enter that airspace. So you'd call up, we have Daytona Beach up here. So you call up and say, Daytona Beach approach, Cessna 123, information alpha, inbound full stop. And they would say, Cessna 123, Daytona Beach approach, standby. That's enough for you to enter that airspace. Again, that's a lot different than the Bravo airspace where they give you explicit cleared into the Bravo. You also must have a two-way radio. Again, you have to be able to talk to somebody, establish that two-way communication. You must have a transponder with altitude reporting capabilities. And we have a speed limit for Class Charlie. So within 4 nautical miles of the primary airport, you must have 200 knots or less. Next, let's talk about Class Delta airspace, also known as Class D. It is denoted by this dashed blue circle around the airport. So not the solid one like we see for Bravo, but this dashed thin blue circle. Don't be confused with this VOR marker that we're seeing right here. Again, smaller than our Class Charlie. It will be towered, but it will be less busy than our Class Charlie and our Class Bravo airspaces. Class Delta airspace is 4 to 5 nautical miles in radius, usually. Class Delta airspace extends from the surface to 2,500 feet AGL. So take a look at our airport here at Flying Cloud. It's at an elevation of 906 feet. So you add 2,500 feet, and we have 3,400 feet. That is our airspace for Class Delta. For weather requirements to enter Class Delta as VFR traffic, you need to have at least 3 statute miles of visibility and maintain that 152 cloud clearance. Again, that's 1,000 above, 500 below, and 2,000 feet horizontal. In order to enter Class Delta airspace, you must establish two-way radio communication before entering, and you must have at least a two-way radio. Your speed limit for Class Delta airspace is 200 knot limit within 4 nautical miles of the primary airport. So again, that's the same as our Class Charlie speed limit. All right, let's talk about Class Echo. Class Echo airspace, also known as the Class Everything airspace. So that's everything between Alpha and our other airspaces here. Class Echo airspace can either start at the surface, at 700 feet AGL, or at 1,200 feet AGL, and can extend up to 17,999 feet MSL, or the base of Class Alpha. How do we tell the difference between our class, if it starts at the surface, if it starts 700 feet, 1,200 feet? How do we tell the difference? Great question. Let's take a look at the airports we have up here. So here, most of the time you'll see Class E airspace with this shaded magenta circle around it. That denotes that the airspace starts at 700 feet AGL. If you look down here at Hector Airport, there's no magenta circle around it. That means the Class E airspace starts at 1,200 feet AGL because it doesn't have that magenta circle around it. Now let's take a look at Redwood Falls here. It's got the magenta circle around it, yes, but what else does it have? It has this dashed magenta line around it. That denotes that the airspace starts at the surface there. So if you want to know if your Class E airspace, where it starts, you have to look at the chart. So Redwood Falls, if you're at the airport, it would start at the surface. If you're at Hector, Class E airspace would start at 1,200 feet. If you're at Hutchinson, your airspace would start at 700 feet and extend all the way up to the base of Class Alpha. Your weather, if you're above 10,000 feet MSL, so if you're up in the mountains, let's say, your weather requirements are 5 statute miles of visibility and your 111 cloud clearance. What is the 111 cloud clearance? I've never heard of that. The 111 cloud clearance is 1,000 above clouds, 1,000 below, and 1 mile of horizontal clearance from clouds. So it's a lot stricter than that 152 cloud clearance. If you are less than 10,000 feet MSL, most of us will be that, your weather requirements are 3 statute miles of visibility and your 152 cloud clearance. Again, that's 1,000 above, 500 below, and 2,000 feet of horizontal clearance. In Class E airspace, you must be less than 250 knots indicated below 10,000 feet MSL. All right, so we've talked about Class B, Class C, Class D, and Class E. Let's talk about Class G airspace. Class G airspace, I like to think of it as Class ground airspace, that G. Think of it as the ground. Class G extends from the surface to the base of Class E. So I bring up this chart right here. It's a more simplified version of what we looked at the first slide of that FAA layout. This pink right here, this will be our Class G airspace. So it's close to the ground. So think of like your crop dusters. Those are the people who are going to be using the Class Golf airspace the most. Your weather for Class Golf, if you're at 2,000 feet AGL or less, during the day, you must have at least 1 statute miles of visibility and remain clear of clouds. At night, you have to have at least 3 statute miles of visibility and maintain your 152 cloud clearance. If you are 1,200 feet AGL or higher, during the day, you must have 1 statute mile of visibility and that 152 cloud clearance. And at night, same thing as 1,200 feet AGL or below, it's 3 statute mile of visibility, 152 cloud clearance. If you are over 1,200 feet AGL and above 10,000 feet MSL, you must have weather minimums of 5 statute mile visibility and that 111 cloud clearance. Again, that's 1,000 above, 1,000 below, and 1 mile of horizontal clearance from your clouds. Again, let's take a look at that overview. So we talked a lot about upside down wedding cakes. This sort of gives you an idea. So when we say underneath the Bravo, we're talking about this area underneath that wedding cake. And inside of it, we're referring to this shaded area. Same thing with our Class Charlie and our Class Delta. So as you can see, we have our Class Bravo, Class Charlie, Class Delta, Class Echo, Class Golf, and of course our Class A all the way up here. If you fly above Class A, you will re-enter Class Echo airspace. So if you plan on flying to the moon, guess what? You're in Class Echo airspace. Let's talk about special use airspace. So there's a lot of different types. I picked out the 5 most common ones that you'll encounter. If you have questions about specific ones, I encourage you to refer to the FAA Flying Handbook or the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, which can be found online. I'll link those below. So the first special use airspace we're going to be talking about is prohibited areas. So prohibited areas you cannot enter under any circumstances. They're denoted by these dashed blue lines. Dashed isn't the correct word. I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but you can see it right here. It's this lined blue area here. In this case, we're looking at northern Minnesota here, so if you want to pull this up on your own sectional, you can. This is protecting the Boundary Waters Canoe area. If you want more information on the prohibited area, you can look up P204, and that gives you all the information for the prohibited area that you need to know. Next, let's talk about restricted areas. So take a look here. This looks very similar. We are at Camp Ripley in central Minnesota by Lake Mille Lacs. Restricted areas are marked very similarly to prohibited areas, except they say restricted, not prohibited. Restricted areas. To enter restricted areas, you have to have permission from the controlling agency to enter. So ask ATC if it's cool to enter the restricted area. That's the biggest thing to know. Next, let's talk about MOAs, or Military Operating Areas. These are denoted by, obviously the text it says, this one in this case says Snoopy West MOA, but it's denoted by, instead of being blue, it is magenta dashed or scissored. I don't really know what to call this. These are areas you enter at your own risk if you're VFR traffic. These MOAs are where you have fighter jets, you have C-130s doing abrupt maneuvers at possible low altitudes. They're doing practice for the military. It's important to know if you plan on flying through a MOA, if it is active or if it's not. The easiest way to find out if a MOA is active or not is to contact ATC. If a MOA is active or it is hot, I do not recommend flying through that area, as it could be hazardous to your flight. Next, let's talk about alert areas. Alert areas are denoted right here by this shaded magenta box here. Alert areas are areas that if you're going to be flying through, you need to be aware of the hazards that they present. So in this case, this alert area, there's a high volume of rotary and fixed wing traffic. So there's going to be a lot of VFR traffic doing maneuvers, doing unpredictable things. So it's important, if you're going to be flying through this alert area, to be aware of it and to use good risk management skills when flying it. So if you can avoid an alert area, especially like if you're going to be flying during a nice sunny day, low winds, you know there's going to be a lot of flight training out in this specific flight area. You want to avoid it. Next, let's talk about a temporary flight restriction. So these you will not find on your paper sectionals because they are temporary. But temporary flight restrictions are areas you can't enter without permission from the controlling agency. Usually that controlling agency is ATC. You can find TFRs in your NOTAMs before takeoff. Or if you have an EFB, an electronic flight book, you can look at your sectional and they will appear, this almost appears orange, but it actually shows up as a red shaded in circle. And it'll give you really good information on when that TFR is active and what's its purpose. So in this case, this TFR is for the Phillies and Diamondback games down in Phoenix, Arizona. They usually do TFRs like if the president is coming to town, if there's a very important figure, or if there's a big event happening. Like in Minnesota here, we have the state fair. They're going to put a TFR over the state fair because there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people there. So make sure you check your NOTAMs before taking off. You do not want to fly through a TFR. Next, let's talk about Washington, D.C. and ADIZ. They're two separate things. First, let's talk about Washington, D.C. In order to fly VFR within 60 nautical miles of the Washington, D.C. VOR, you need to complete special awareness training. I'll leave a link to more information for that below. I do not live close to Washington, D.C., so I've never had to do this, but I'll leave a link down below with more information on how to complete that special awareness training. From what I've heard, it's not that difficult to complete. Next, let's talk about ADIZ, our Air Defense Identification Zone. Our ADIZ, you can find it along our coastlines. Essentially what it marks is our airspace. So you can see it's right here, contiguous U.S. ADIZ. In order to enter through the ADIZ to come into the United States, you must have an active IFR or VFR flight plan. The keyword being there, active. Next, let's talk about Special VFR. Special VFR is a clearance issued by ATC, and it allows pilots to operate in less than VFR conditions. So if you need to move a plane from one small airport to the other for maintenance, but it's a really bad weather day out, guess what? Special VFR lets you do that. In order to do Special VFR, there must be at least one statute mile visibility, and you must remain clear of clouds. You will be on with ATC this whole time. That's why you're allowed to get that close to clouds. If you're going to do night Special VFR, you need to have an IFR rating. You can pick up a SVFR with either your flight service station or ATC. VFR Chart Symbols. Let's talk about this real quick, and then we can hop over to the VFR sectional and put some practical application through it. Biggest things to know. Airports that have control towers are shown in blue. If it doesn't have a control tower, it'll be in magenta, so take a look at our two sides here. That's a big thing to know. Another big thing to know is how to read our airport's information. Let's take a look at Duluth, Minnesota here. Let's start from the top. Duluth International Airport. What kind of airspace is it? Well, it has that dashed blue line around it. What is the dashed blue line? That means it's a class Delta airspace. So it has a blue airport, so it has a control tower. We know that we're going to be talking to a controller. What frequency do we pick up the controller? Right here it says CT control tower 118.3. That's our control tower frequency. How do we get our weather before our approach? Because when we enter a towered airport, we need to say we have information Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, whatever it may be. You pick up your ADIZ on 124.1. The airport elevation can be found right below, 1,428. It has lighting available, and its longest runway is 10,600 feet. How do we get that? This is abbreviated. So every number you see here, let's take a look at Cloquet. You see 40 right here. Add 2 zeros to the back, the longest runway is 4,000 feet. That's how we get that length of that runway. Let's take a look at a Class Echo airspace here. Aitkin, Minnesota. So Aitkin Municipal, to pick up the AWAS, so this doesn't have an A, this has an AWAS, but that's how we're going to get our weather for flying into Aitkin, Minnesota. You'll pick it up on the frequency 118.675. The airport elevation is 1,206. It has pilot-controlled lighting, star L. That means that the pilots, you have to click it either 3 times your microphone, 5 times, or 7 times to get the lighting to work at the airport. And its longest runway is 4,000 feet. 123.05, what does this C mean? That stands for our CTAF. So that's how you communicate with other pilots at Aitken Airport here. Even though for Class Echo airspace there are no communication requirements, you are going to make a 10-mile radio call, a 5-mile radio call, a 3-mile radio call, and then calling when you're flying all parts of the pad, including your taxi back to the FBO. This alerts other traffic on the CTAF 123.05 that of your intentions and what you're doing, so they're able to plan around you. I'm working on getting my CFI. I should have it here in the next month. So if I get anything wrong, please comment below. I will fix it. I really appreciate the time. Leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll respond to all comments. Thank you guys. Have a nice day.